will call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area, and we recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda today? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that May 4th, 2023 agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Councillor Shortreed.
Agenda items 7A and 23C for a zoning bylaw amendment application for RNF Moreland Limited, as I am employed there.
Thank you. I do have a couple of remarks that I wanted to make today on two subjects. First, I'd like to acknowledge the frustration and anger that anyone who has been served by the Minden Emergency Department has felt upon hearing the news of its impending closure. I know this has been a serious impact, or will have a serious impact on a number of residents here in Algonquin Highlands, and the apparent lack of a plan going forward makes it even harder for us all to accept. As part of County Council, I have voiced many concerns about how poorly this has been communicated and how it's being handled. And if the Minden ER can't be saved or the decision delayed, we will continue to do everything we can to ensure effective healthcare services continue for both residents and visitors across both the municipality and the county. I'd also like to take a minute to mention that Monday was First Responders Day. All of our first responders across the county have truly stepped up to the plate this week to organize open houses at each of their facilities and welcome the public, sharing information about what they do for us and what opportunities there are for volunteers. While this was a day to recognize and honor all first responders, including the OPP, community paramedics, and firefighters across the county, it was also a day to honor doctors, nurses, emergency medical techs, and emergency managers, military personnel, medical evac pilots, and dispatchers, even if they weren't able to participate in the events this week. But in particular, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the members of our own Algonquin Highlands Fire Department who work so hard and stand ready to fight to save property and lives every day. Also of special note, one of our longest standing volunteer members, Tony Amo, just celebrated his 50th anniversary as a firefighter, both professional and volunteer. Our congratulations to Tony for his dedication to our community. And my heartfelt thanks to you all for everything that you do for us every day. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of April the 20th? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that the April 20th, 2023 regular council meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. We do have a public meeting today, so could I have a mover and a seconder go into a public meeting? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards. And if you could depart the room, please.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council adjourns its open session at 9:03 a.m. in order to proceed into a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 223 RNF Moreland Limited, part of Lot 3, Concession 13, Geographic Township of Sherburne.
All in favor? That's carried. Good morning, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
If you'd like to give us your report.
Certainly. This property is currently zoned general industrial exception 8 and designated as part of the Dorset settlement area under the official plan. The property is approximately 1.34 acres in area with 103 meters of frontage on Trading Bay Road. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, hamlet residential, rural and recreational, commercial. The lands are currently developed with a single family dwelling. This property is also subject to consent application H 5322. This property is better known as the Dorset Timber Mart. So this proposal or the severance is to sever the commercial operation from the residence that's also on that property. So this will rezone the property, which the house sits on, from general industrial exception 8 to hamlet residential. And that is in order to fulfill a condition of the consent application. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received to date. One thing to note is with our new zoning bylaw being passed in May of last year, there is a restriction on zoning amendments within 2 years of a new bylaw being passed. However, the Planning Act does allow council to pass a resolution to allow for a zoning amendment within that 2-year time frame. So my recommendation would be approval of the proposal and approval of the resolution exempting the 2-year restriction.
Okay, any questions for Sean? So do we have a separate resolution approving us making this decision outside of the requirements of the Planning Act?
Yeah, that's part of the resolution when we go back into.
Okay, so it's
Yep,
it's all part of one motion. I understand that the agent for the applicant is here. Mr. Williams, do you wish to speak to the application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have much to add, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the agent? Hearing none. Could I have a motion to come out of a public hearing? Mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Council Richards. Be it resolved, council adjourns its public meeting at 9:07 a.m. and regular session resumed.
All in favor? That's carried. You can also have a mover and a seconder to receive Sean's report. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
By Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Council Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 3123 regarding the zoning of lands located at part of Lot 3, Concession 12, Geographic Township of Sherburne, RNF Moulin Limited, submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated May 4th, 2023, and that council, in accordance with section 10002 of the Planning Act, allows proposed zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 223 be tabled for consideration, and the council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe Sean, you could tell Julie she can come back in. So we have no delegations today. Nothing under building and bylaw enforcement. So next up is Parks and Recreation. Good morning, Chris. So you were going to tell us about the agreement with Tulloch to do some work at the tower.
That's right. So last year we did a request for proposal, which included services for lightning strike protection system, as well as the design and costing of other components needed on the tower over the next couple of years, which is electrical work, drainage work on the tower, and a cantilever deck support as a redundant deck support on the upper deck. That RFP didn't receive any bids. So last year in July, I brought that information back to council. And we had at that time received information from Tulloch, who just wasn't able to meet the deadline of the RFP. So council approved going ahead with entering into negotiations with them. So myself and Angie have done that. And before you today is the result of those negotiations, which is an agreement to move forward at this time. This is their standard client consultant agreement, and this process would be the authorization to sign that agreement. Our budget for this year for these services is more than what has been proposed in their budget here. We have a little over $60,000 budgeted, and they've proposed 55.5 for their services. So what would happen from this is we'd move ahead with an entire design tender, which would include all of the components. It would allow us to then, if on budget, move forward with the lightning strike protection system, and then get a solid understanding by using designs of what the costing will be for the other components, and then decide whether or not that's something that we can go ahead with next year or piece it out over several years. It'll just give us that solid number, while at the same time saving us the costs of going through multiple different tender processes for each phase. So just looking to have an authorization of signature for this.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to authorize proceeding? Councillor Short Reed and Richards.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved that council receives a memorandum of agreement with Tulloch for project management and consulting services for the Dorset Tower, and directs a bylaw be brought forward to authorize the execution of the agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Is Melissa joining us? There she is. Next on the agenda under environmental business is looking at some options for the Hawk Lake waste management site.
Sorry, just
It's all right.
my phone is not behaving today. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, so this is just a report to follow up from a discussion that was had at the projects and priorities meeting back in December, and council had asked staff to look at some options for waste management services in the Hawk Lake area. And this is a proposal sort of for the plan to investigate those options. So engaging the services of KBM Environmental to assist with that. And I'll leave it for you for questions.
Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks very much. I'm very much in support of this. My one question would be, is there a way, or is it already foreseen, that we might tweak it just enough so that we're not only thinking about Hawk Lake, but also gathering whatever wisdom they have about innovative new waste management possibilities that we could keep in the back of our brain as we think about waste management in the future for the township, because we've got some long-term thinking to do there. So, you know, for example, when I look at phase 2, I wonder if what we're going to receive back are, therefore, here are the top 3 things or the top 4 options. And I wonder if it's possible to have like a context paragraph where they talk about, you know, here's where the industry is going. Here's what folks are doing elsewhere that may or may not apply to this site, but it's an exciting way to look at waste management. Is there any way that we could just tweak it to get the full benefit? Or is that already sort of envisioned here?
I would almost think that that would be a separate separate contract that we'd have to enter into.
I mean, if I may, that would be a fairly, that's a fairly wide sort of scope of work to endeavor, or to look at that. And as part of this, the first stage will be sort of looking at what options are out there. So it will be a broad range, broad-based vision. So some of that certainly would contribute to sort of the broader reach that you're looking at. And then phase two is looking at, okay, well, what would be the best options to meet this? But we would still have, on our table, what all those other options, that didn't work. And maybe, as you say, maybe they might be something to bring into, a more sort of larger strategic plan look, at the entire system in the future. Is that sort of
Thoughts? Do you have any comments on that?
I think Melissa's absolutely right, and you as well, Mayor, that is a much broader look, strategic look at waste management in general. However, it may be incorporated somewhat into what we look at. And it may also come into play when the county is looking at their waste management strategy.
That is another thing to consider, that there's a contract out there to look at waste management overall across the county. So, to me, I don't disagree with your suggestion. It'd be nice to have ideas about, what innovative things we can do. But I think not only would it expand the scope of the work here, add to the cost and the time within which we would get any kind of responses. And I know that there are some folks in the area who are anxious for us to proceed, to look at the Hawk Lake site in particular. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. And I understand those points fully. I think to clarify, I wasn't thinking about a whole new phase of study. It was more using the wisdom and the knowledge they already have on waste management systems, just a broad contextual paragraph to say, so here, waste management is going in 5 different ways these days. They're interesting. Here's the way that we think might work for you, just so that we're tying their recommendation to what's going on in the broader world for our own context and moving forward. But I hear what you're saying. And I certainly wouldn't be advocating for additional work to be undertaken.
Well, I would expect that by them giving us options for the site, that we should probably get that anyway. I would think.
sorry, if I may, I think that part of that phase one, like I mentioned, will include some of that. And, it still will be within sort of the limited scope, not necessarily looking at, things beyond service delivery sort of thing. So it wouldn't necessarily be looking at new approaches to diversion and things like that. But those are things that are on the agenda all the time, and certainly it will bring forward some ideas, I think. And I know there was discussion that whether looking at Hawk needs to be part of a larger discussion as well, sort of looking at and I think that would be the next part of the conversation once there's sort of some options on the table. So.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with this? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives report EB 1423 regarding Hawk Lake Area Waste Management Services Delivery Option Study submitted by Melissa Murray dated May 4th, 2023. And the council authorized single source procurement to engage the services of Kimbium Inc. and authorized project costs with an upset limit of $18,500 plus taxes. Anticipated cost plus 15% contingency to be funded from the Hawk Lake landfill site reserve.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thought we'd have more discussion about that, but I guess we're ready to go. Okay, we've got a couple of items under Public Works. First is an update on the Dorset Rec Center.
Thank you. Hope everybody's having a good day so far.
So far, don't tell me you're gonna change that.
No, I hope not.
Right on.
So for an update on the Dorset Rec Center is we received one bid on closing date. And we'll be reviewing that this afternoon. The CAO and the engineer and myself will be reviewing that and coming back with recommendations. So it was unfortunate that we only got one bid when there was quite a few contractors that showed up, but unfortunately, that's what we received. So we'll have to see what they say and how we can move forward.
Well, it's at least we're able to move forward. Is there any idea you can give us about the timing of when the contractor, if everything with the bid is good to go, what the timing might be for work?
I would hate to give any kind of date on that, because if we go through the process of reviewing it and then we don't go with the contractor or something comes up, or I would just hate to give a date and then council be stuck on that date. So hopefully by the next 18th meeting, we should have more information that would be able to provide that.
The only reason I ask is I know that that's the prevailing question out there is when is it going to be open? When is it going to be done? Anyway, that sounds good. Look forward to hearing your report at the next meeting.
Thank you.
So next is a memorandum of agreement with Tulloch on redevelopment of their public works garage.
Yeah, so from the last council meeting, I brought forward a report based on the fees for Tulloch Engineering, and this is the agreement to go along with it.
Any questions about that item? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks, Adam. Just to confirm, when they write, we will be providing you with one design drawing, etc. There are, I think, one or two places where they say, we will give you a drawing. And if there are supplementary services, we will bill you on top of the lump sum. Does that mean that if you have thoughts, tweaks for the one design that they give you, that will be billed on top, or is there a little bit of back and forth built into that?
There's a lot of back and forth built into it. So basically the process will be, once the base drawing is given to the township staff, then we'll review it with Tulloch Engineering and keep going back and forth on it. And then when the final drawing is approved, that's the one that they'll give us. And anything above and beyond that would be extra. So there's a lot of back and forth to make sure that the final drawing is right where we want it to be.
Any other questions about this project? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Just one further question then. Their project management line item is referring to the project management of this design phase. Are you also considering them, and forgive me if we already know this and I've forgotten, are they going to be project managing the build, presumably, presuming it all goes forward, or will that be sort of an in-house thing?
As of right now, it was the intent that they would be the project manager for this build. I know we're looking at a project manager, and although the project manager will be coming in and overseeing a lot of this along with myself, it was just a lot of project to drop onto somebody for their first couple of weeks here. So it was best suited that this project stay with Tulloch until either next year or until we decide that the new project manager can take on the rest of it. But the idea was that they would take on all of it.
Any other questions about this agreement? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with it? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives memorandum of agreement with Tulloch for the redevelopment of the public works property for the new public works garage, and directs a bylaw be brought forward to authorize the execution of the agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. At this rate, we're going to be finished by coffee time. The next item is the revised terms of reference for the Airport Advisory Committee. You've all had a chance to review them. Revisions are made based on our discussion at our last meeting. Any questions? Be nice to get this committee going again. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder then to adopt the new terms of reference? Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Council Richard, second by Council Shortreed, be it resolved, the council approves and adopts the revised terms of reference for the Airport Advisory Committee and direct staff to advertise for committee members, and the bylaw 2019-90 is hereby repealed.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, the next item is the minutes from the Green Burial Advisory Committee. One comment, I noticed that there are certain action items on the minutes, and it just seems to me that it would be more appropriate to have a mover and a seconder when you're recommending specific actions to council. That's more in line with, how minutes should be presented. So just going forward as a note, that'd be great. Acknowledging that it is a member of council that's taking the minutes, which isn't always the case, it just, but I think that would be helpful for us if it shows that the committee is in concurrence with what's being recommended. The other thing that I wanted to ask about was the note about the society itself preparing an information package on its own. And it seemed to me that would be something that would be done in consultation with the committee. If you could comment on that, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, thank you, very much so. And we've already reached out to our CAO to talk about how those two forces come together. So I think there is a strong understanding that the committee would bring forward things that they would like to see on such a document, but the document would be owned by the township, and it would be the township's choice as to what stays and what goes. I think it'll work out.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about the Green Burial minutes? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive them? Councillors Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved that the March 28th, 2023 Green Burial Advisory Committee minutes be received for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is correspondence from Paul McGinnis with a request of support from us to have them install a speed sign device on North Shore Road. I understand you have some comments you'd like to make about that.
Yes, so first I would just like to address a couple things in the letter, especially for new council, is that where it does say here that we have a safety issue, I would just like to clarify that we have not had any significant accidents or MVCs brought forward to my attention as the road authority. That nothing has been documented in the sense of a safety collision incident. I just wanted to make sure that council was aware of that. Secondly, I did bring forward in projects and priorities and at the budget to have a speed survey done of all of our roads. I've been in talks with the same company that a neighboring municipality is using, potentially for us to get on board with their project as well. So I would be coming back to council on the 18th with a report updating what that looks like. So I would like to hold off on anything if that's possible to after that meeting so you can see what's being brought forward through the speed review of what that would look like for our roads. And as far as the traffic sign, I know we looked at this last year. It was brought up last year, and at that time it was delayed, or wasn't delayed. I guess it just wasn't approved to go forward. The county and myself, the county and the township have not conversed about any of this. So this was news to me that the county was willing to help out again. Because that's what happened last time as well. Somebody reached out to the county and not to us. And I did research having signs brought up. And yeah, again, at that time, council did not want to move forward with it. So I would like to hold off until after the report to council on the speed review, and then we can go from there.
I think there's just probably been some miscommunication here, or misunderstandings. I know that they did. The understanding was that the sign itself, the speed sign, belongs to the county, so they went directly to the county. And I think that at that point, the point was made that we needed to support that request. And so it kind of I think it got lost in the shuffle at that time, and that's why it's coming back. And you know, with respect to safety, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been no record of accidents, but I think that the concern is that, you know, there's a lot of people walking on North Shore Road, and there's an awful lot of people who are definitely exceeding the speed limit. And I don't know that the wish is to reduce the speed limit further or create a safety zone, but rather I think they saw putting up the sign for a period of time would just deter people from speeding. You know, when you see the sign and you see how fast you're going, it tends to slow people down. And I think that's really more their goal. I know they're going to be disappointed with the delay. I guess I'd ask if you're going to bring a report back and you want us to wait until you bring that report back, could they be at the beginning of, you know, if the sign is going to be used for your work, if they could sort of be at the beginning of the project, so that in essence, they'd still get what they're asking for, but it would work within your, you know, the structure of what you're doing.
So through you, Mayor, the sign that is being referred to here will not have any effect on the project. The project doesn't require county information or county technology. This is a separate company that would come in and they bring everything of their own, and there wouldn't be a sign on the road that shows speed. What they will come in and do is, and this is where the report will speak more to that, but what they'll do is they will assess each road individually based on a parameter of information, and then they assess whether or not the speed of the road should be reduced or left alone based on information, based on professional information gathered through all of our roads. So having this sign up, I mean, it's nice to see, but it's police that we need on our road to enforcement, to make enforcement. Signs.
I have spoken to the police about it. But so what would be the harm? You know, if the county has the sign available and are willing to let them have it, you know, put in place for a couple of weeks, I just don't see how it would conflict with the work that you want to do, or it doesn't cost any additional money.
Through you, Mayor, I don't know if it costs us money because I have not spoke with the county about this. So I can call the county and talk to them about it. If the signs are available, what it costs us. I would strongly recommend that they do not get put on private property. Not that I've ever seen them put on private property. Usually they're on the edge of the township road allowance. I mean, if that's what council would like to have the signs put up, then I can look into it. But I have not reached out to the county, and they haven't reached out to myself as well.
Adam CAO.
If Adam does find out that that the county can put that sign on the road for a period of time, and council wants to go in that direction, and then there's no cost to it, just in between now and then, is council supportive of us giving the go ahead to that?
I don't see any harm in it as long as there's no cost associated with it. So, you know, I think what we could do is pass a resolution supporting it, you know, assuming that there is no cost associated with it. Thoughts from council? If there's, you know, if there's no conflict or interference between the work that you want to do and what they want to do, if it makes them feel safer, if it gives them some sense of security to do that. And you know, I think they realize that they followed maybe a little bit the wrong path last year, and they're trying to do things properly this year. But it hadn't occurred to me that there would be a cost to us.
I can only assume that there would be a setup cost. I mean, if we go and do something for the county, there's our staff time to do it. They will do the same for us. So, I mean, there is going to be a cost associated to it. I doubt that they would rent it to us. They'll most likely lend it to us. I mean, we do a lot of sharing back and forth of equipment. So, I mean, I don't foresee a cost of that nature, but there would be a staffing cost. But I mean, I don't think that's anything of worry if council wants to move forward.
Okay, I'm looking for thoughts from other members of council. Councillor Shortreed.
If it's not gonna cost, can we put a limit to how much it's gonna cost that will,
Yeah, no cost,
yeah, well, I mean, staff time,
but it wouldn't be our staff.
no.
And I-
County staff.
I mean, I obviously Adam needs to have a conversation with the county and make sure that we're not going to be invoiced for their time or that anybody would be invoiced. No, there's been no comment that I'm aware of that there was any cost associated with this. So I think if we're supportive of doing it, we pass a resolution that says at no cost to the township, then
I agree.
we're. So Richards.
I think, you know, if it makes them feel better to have the sign, let them have the sign. You know, make sure there's no cost to the township for it. And go ahead.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Day.
So long as we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by temporarily fixing a problem and then a study says, no, there's no problem here. And then, but I don't think that would transpire. I don't think people's behavior changes that quick. So I'm in favor.
Yeah. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward, assuming there's no cost associated with it? Councillors Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Diubi. Be it resolved, council receives correspondence from Paul McGinnis requesting support for installation of electronic speed sign on North Shore Road. And further, council supports a request for the installation of the speed sign at no cost to the township.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll hope that when the police are patrolling North Shore Road, which they said they would do, they might catch whoever's stealing the signs. I can't imagine having to put them out and then take them back in every night. So, thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Nothing under fire services, nothing under finance, nothing under admin. So we're right back into planning. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So first is just a brief discussion on the telecommunications policy that we've got in place. I did ask for this item to be put on the agenda, simply not to have necessarily asked Sean to do any work in advance, but maybe to have him do a little bit of investigating between now and our next meeting. A couple of issues that came to my mind when we were finished our last discussion, and you know, I'm sorry that you weren't available to, you know, you weren't able to take part in that discussion, but part of the concerns I think were raised were based on health issues, and I think our policy says that we shouldn't be making decisions based on health issues, that it's based on planning principles. And the conflict between what we've got in our report, saying that we're concerned about visual impacts, and I know that is a huge concern for people, is the visual impact. How that stacks up against federal policy and what they're looking for is something that, you know, I'm quite sure that this policy, having been in place for some time, has been, there's new thinking about things like distances, you know, the health regulations, what I said will accept and not accept, and maybe a little bit of research and bringing the policy up to date might be something that we would consider. The other thing that I noted in the policy is that there's a discrepancy in us suggesting that the towers shouldn't be any closer than 1,000 meters. And that's something that in particular, I'd like to see us investigate to see if there's any new technology or documentation that suggests anything different than that. But our policy also says that we would notify folks within 500 meters, which is in, you know, I mean, that those two don't jive. So, you know, if council is in agreement, I'd just like Sean to take a little bit deeper dive into what's out there for policies in other municipalities and make sure that we're in line with our own, you know, 500 meters versus 1,000 meters. You know, I know that at the last meeting, there was a bit of an arbitrary distance that someone suggested, and, you know, we need to have some foundation for whatever distances that we put in place. So any questions or thoughts about that? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. The 500 meters does stick out in my mind, given the experience that we had last year. Sean, maybe you can remind me which tower it was, but I remember distinctly there was a public meeting to which only one person attended, and because all of the people, well, possibly all of the people who were within 500 meters had their back to the tower. And everyone just beyond the 500 meters had a direct sight line to the tower, but they weren't notified because they weren't in the 500 meters. So it strikes me that there might be some ratio of distance to sight line or distance to something else that that could be explored to help reduce that.
Yeah, because this isn't going to be the last tower application that we're going to look at. And yeah, I just think it's time for us to take a look at the policy and see if we need to make any changes or not. But it's a good point about, you know, where people are in relation to the tower. And, you know, this is a tough one because particularly with the visuals, and, you know, I understand people's concern about it. You know, people asking questions about, well, why does the tower have to be close to the lake? Because everybody's living on the lake. You know, it just, and they can't be served necessarily as well by further distances. There's just, you know, so many aspects of this that need to be considered. Anyway, we look forward to hearing what you might bring back to us.
Sure, and I can just offer a few, you know, preliminary comments. So innovation in science and economic development in Canada, they do lay out things that a municipality can and cannot comment on when considering towers, and health impacts is one that is not something that has any bearing on a municipal decision. So we cannot include anything like that in a future policy. With respect to the buffer around a tower and people who would receive notification, the 500 meters comes directly from the default policy of the ministry. So we can certainly look at expanding that, especially in areas where the tower could be visible from a lake. And I can certainly look into what options would be available. I would note that in the ministry's policy document on towers, they do note where a municipal policy is considered to be unreasonable. It could be the applicant could go to the ministry for an interpretation of our policy. So at the end of the day, it does have to be a reasonable policy that can be followed by these applicants. In this day and age, towers are something that are becoming a necessity in areas in order to provide, you know, effective communication and resources for people in the rural areas. So yeah, I'm happy to look at, you know, what other policies are out there. I know Highlands East has recently gone through a comprehensive review of their policy, and they have some interesting concepts in theirs. So I'll be looking forward to bringing a report back to council.
It's interesting that, you know, for the federal government to come up with a policy that sort of covers everybody. You know, that what's appropriate or what can be managed in an urban environment is something entirely different in a rural environment, especially one like ours. So it'll be interesting to see that, you know, I mean, there's towers on top of residential properties in cities, and, you know, you just sort of, and we're talking about 1,000 meters. So anyway, look forward to you know, what you bring back to us. Councillor Richards.
And I was just wondering, when you're looking into what other municipalities are doing, if there's anything out there that we could be asking for letters of support from the neighboring properties. Say there's another residential property within 500 meters that they would support the tower being placed next to them. And that a majority of those neighbors would be required in order to go ahead with that approval. I mean, to me, it's quite unfair that one property owner can decide that he's gonna let a tower go on his property, be compensated significantly for doing so, and his neighbors have absolutely nothing to say about it. So I'd like to know if that's something that we could do.
So my initial thoughts are that because it's not something, the approval authority doesn't rest with us. I'm not sure we would have the ability to require a letter of support. There is a public consultation process that they have to follow. But yeah, I'll certainly look at other policies and see if that is something that we are able to include, but I'm not sure it would be.
I've also been talking at some great length with Eorn about their communication process. Asking them to, to give a little bit more thought to that, because it seems it's more information as opposed to communication or consultation. They use the word consultation, and this isn't, for the purposes of the policy, but just for general information. That it just seems like there should be a little bit more give and take when it comes to the discussion, as opposed to here's what we're going to do, period. And corrected them in their, although you very correctly in our policy said that, for the northern part of the municipality, it should be advertised in the Huntsville paper. That did not happen in this last application. It was advertised in the Minden Times. And so I've made it quite clear to them that they need to look at the closest and most appropriate, news agency. And, I think that there's a number of improvements that can be made with respect to communications going forward. Madam CAO?
Just for clarification for Sean, bringing the policy back. Our policy currently states 500 meters, and Mayor, you've mentioned 1,000 meters a couple of times. Is that what council's leaning towards, or?
I just want to find out what the norm is, what the standard is, what distances other people are using. I'm not looking for necessarily, agreeing to the 1,000 meters or something lesser. Just looking to see what other people are doing and what the standard might be. We heard from the Rogers representative that, that the policy was developed a number of years ago and was based on different usage. And that it wasn't, the 1,000 meters wasn't appropriate anymore. Well, let's find out if that's in fact the case. Go ahead.
And sorry, for clarification, the 1,000 meters you're referring to, is that the part in our policy where it talks about generally they should be located at a minimum of 1 kilometer from the nearest residential use? Okay.
Any other comments or questions about that? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve Sean moving forward to look at some amendments? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council direct staff to bring back proposed revisions as discussed to the telecommunications facility policy for further discussion.
All in favor? That's carried. Next are the minutes from the Cultural Resources Working Group. Any comment or anything you want to bring forward from that, Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, the work is actually going quite well. I think if not for next council meeting, but then the council meeting after that, we should have before you some recommendations on a way forward, which might also signal the end of the existence of the working group as council considers next phases for a committee of council. So stay tuned. I think you'll see something very soon.
Okay, any questions? Could I then have a mover and a seconder to receive the March 23rd minutes from the Cultural Resources Working Group? Councillors Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives March 28th, 2023 Cultural Resources Working Group meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is an application for a lot addition by Smith in Stanhope.
Yeah, this is a property that's located on Buckslide Road. This property was before council in March of last year for a severance for 2 new rural lots. And they're now looking at adding one of the proposed parcels to an existing parcel. So that's why this is coming back to council, just specifically to do with the lot addition. They are large lots, and the lot size will meet the minimum requirements. So staff are supportive of the proposed application.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are these the properties where we asked for that they ensure that there's a buffer that remain on the along the road?
So the land division committee did include that as a condition. That was not something that came from the municipality, but my understanding is during the land division committee, that was something that came up.
So would that be more appropriate to come from here or the land division, or does it matter?
I think the land division committee is where it should rest, because that's where the original condition came from. So that would be my preference.
Any questions or comments about this application? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with it? Councillors Richards, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 3323 prepared by Sean O'Callahan, dated May 4th, 2023, regarding proposed severance of lands located at part of lots 8 and 9, concession 7, geographic township of Stanhope Smith, submitted by Marie Poirier Planning and Associates on behalf of Brian Smith. And further, council supports in principle the proposed severance subject to the following conditions: 1, payment of taxes, including penalty and interest; 2, settlement of 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu in the amount of $100 for the severed parcel shall be paid to the Township of Algonquin Highlands pursuant to section 51(1) of the Planning Act. 3, a copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan, and for the severed parcel merge in title with the benefiting lands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a proposed shore road allowance closing by McLaughlin and Moot on Boshkung Lake.
Yes, this is the application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. After staff review, it seems like a fairly straightforward application with nothing of particular note. So staff would recommend the application be approved in principle.
Any questions with the application? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve it? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 3423 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 9, concession 1, geographic township of Stanhope, McLaughlin, Moot, Boshkung Lake, and the council approves in principle application OSRA 323 made to stop up closing and convey the said shore road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is another application to close a shore road allowance by Kerr on Beach Lake.
Yes, another application to close the shore road allowance here. One thing to note with this application is the applicant did provide a draft survey, which does show an irregularity with the side lot line, where it's not a straight line projection. So in this case, I am recommending an additional condition be included, being that the neighbors on both sides of this property provide a letter of support before the application proceed any further.
Good idea. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to approve this application, including that separate recommendation? Councillors Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 3523 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 17, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, Curve Beach Lake. And the council approves in principle application OSR 423 made to stop up closing of the said shoreline road allowance. And that the approval in principle is conditional on a letter of support being received from both neighboring property owners prior to the application being processed further, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure once a letter of support is received from both neighboring properties.
All in favor? That's carried. Finally, a proposed road allowance closing by Lit in the township of Stanhope. So that's the church in Carnarvon.
Yes, that's correct. So the applicant, they are applying to purchase a portion of the road allowance that's adjacent to their property. There is a road that leads to the cemetery, but this proposal will not impact the use of that road. So I have been in discussions with the operations manager as well, so he's reviewed the application and has no concerns. They are just looking to purchase a small portion, essentially to square off a part of the property that they already own where a ramp exists. So after review, staff have no concerns with the application and would support it being approved in principle.
Any questions? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to approve it? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 3623 regarding proposed road allowance closing between lots 15 and 16, concession 1, geographic township of Stanhope. Submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated May 4th, 2023, and the council approves in principle application RA 223 made to stop up, close, and convey half of the said road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think that maybe we'll stop for a 10-minute break. Next on the agenda are external board meetings and reports from them, starting with the Dorset Community Partnership. Councillor Shortreed.
Dorset Community Partnership, that was just a couple of weeks ago, so there won't be one for a little while. Then on to the Dorset Health Hub, that was last week. It was a great meeting, got a tour of their new exam room, and in the hopefully near future, they're going to bring a presentation to council.
Okay. Has there been an official request for funding for this year?
No,
They're going to make that before the end of the year?
that's what, hopefully when they come to council, they will do that.
Okay, look forward to that. Anything on the Upper Trent Water Management Partnership?
We had our first meeting 2 weeks ago. Which was really great. They're working on a video for the CEWF is working on a video for shoreline protection with an emphasis on climate change and what waterfront property owners need to do to protect themselves from extreme water related events that are a result of the climate change. The report from the dam, as of 2 weeks ago, conditions were stable, but vulnerable, and it's done nothing but rain since then. I can tell you the water is high, very high.
Yeah. Ready to spill over.
Yeah, so there is concern there. The Red Pine Dam is 2 more years to completion. I also got some feedback that the Hawk Lake Dam is on their list to do, but they don't have funding for it yet. So we don't know anything.
Nothing specific as dates. Okay. Anything different from the Muskoka Watershed Council?
Not much. They're looking for volunteers specifically that can do marketing strategy. They're working on a new report card and that is enhancing key indicators for better report cards going forward, specifically focusing on species at risk. And then they're planning to delegate.
Okay, next is the Community Policing Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to say that we finally met last Friday, which was an excellent meeting. The 4 mayors and the acting detachment commander. Basically, it was a bit of an introductory session with us because other than Mayor Burton, none of us had been at a CPAC meeting for, well, I've never been, and neither had Mayor Carter. I'm sure Mayor Fury has in the past, but not for some time. So just this is how things are going, and this is where our emphasis is. They gave us a lot of statistics. I spent a little bit of time talking about some of the things that municipalities can do to try and reduce policing costs and, through bylaws and policies and things like that. The one really good piece of news was that we will be getting 4 new officers in the near future, which is really good news. And so, anytime that anybody's got anything specific that they'd like me to raise with them, just let me know. I was really impressed with the meeting. I thought it was really good, and we're going to have another one, although we'd agreed that we would meet quarterly. We kind of got cut off a little bit earlier than I think we had intended this meeting. So we're going to have another one, I would think, within the next month. So I'll have more to report then. I was just really pleased to hear about how they're adding to the force and the thought that there would be any kind of consolidation with the city of Kawartha Lakes or Peterborough is not on the books at all. So status quo remains there. As far as the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, I'm going to a meeting of the first meeting that I'll be able to attend will be next week. In the meantime, I've been doing quite a bit of talking to members there about their communications process and how they might improve that. And I think they've taken those comments into strong consideration. I believe that there will be at least one more application coming through to us probably in the not too distant future. So it'll be interesting to see where they are and what that's about. Anything that you'd like to bring to us from the library board?
Sadly, only one piece of information to share, which is board member Tim Casey passed away in the last couple of weeks. He was also an employee of the library for a time before joining the board. So it comes as a great sadness, and I'm sure we all express our condolences to his family.
Any luck with trying to emphasize the need for a little bit of extra focus on Stanhope?
I have raised it in conversation with Chris, not at the board itself, but I have raised it in conversation with the director. So ideally, we'll be seeing something coming forward at a future agenda.
Okay, don't let it go.
No.
I just see a lot of emphasis being placed on, other municipalities, and I just think it would help us here to just sort of, because we were closed for so long, to put just a little bit more emphasis on Stanhope. And I mean, I know there are standard programs, but maybe, a couple of additional hours or anything, something that would move that forward. Anything on community safety and well-being?
No, the next meeting is coming up on the 9th, so I look forward to that. That will be my first meeting.
The coordinator for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan did an absolutely bang up job on the First Responders Day.
Oh, good.
Went around, got some excellent pictures, and, you know, she played a strong role in getting that going. I also understand, although I can't give you all the details, that there's a project that they're working on with youth to do art displays that are related to community safety and well-being. So I really look forward to seeing the virtual display of that. Anything on the Muskoka River Watershed Communications Committee?
Yes, headline news. It has been a cold spring. It has been a wet spring, and water levels will be remaining higher for about 2 additional weeks beyond the average.
Thank you. Okay, nothing under general business. Are there any motion notices? Hearing none. Was there any support for or any comment anyone wished to make on the correspondence listing? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence? Councilors Richards and Shortreed.
By Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, council receives the May 4th, 2023 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And could I have a motion or a mover and a seconder to go into closed? Councilors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, council adjourns its open session at 10:21 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing personal matters about identifiable individual and labor relations or employee negotiations in accordance with section 239(2)B and D of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, staff hiring matter.
All in favor? That's carried. So they're all together in one motion. Welcome back. We're now into the bylaws section of the agenda. If you would recuse yourself from the room, please. So could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the bylaws, please? Councilors Richards, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu, be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, consider read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. 2023-35, to authorize the execution of a memorandum of agreement with Tulloch Engineering, Inc. for consulting services for the redevelopment of the Public Works property. 2023-36, to authorize the execution of a memorandum of agreement with Tulloch Engineering, Inc. for project management and consulting services for the Dorset Tower. 2023-37, amend bylaw, 2023-37 to amend bylaw 2022-49 is amended, being that the comprehensive bylaw of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for application AHZBA 223 R&F Moulin Limited.
All in favor? That's carried. Could you ask Councillor Shortreed to come back, or did somebody? And could I have a mover and a seconder on the confirmatory bylaw, please? Councillors Richards and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu, be it resolved that bylaw 2023-38 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved the meeting be adjourned at 10:41 a.m.
All in favor? That's carried.